This is the Get a Life podcast. Ex-Cult Conversations.
Welcome back, everyone. Today marks our 1-year anniversary from when we started this podcast, and we have come a long way. Our original first YouTube podcast that went out was October 13th, and this year it lands on Friday, October 13th for us here in Canada and the United States. So we're going to run through the statistics on how well our podcast has done and globally how far it has reached. So welcome and celebrate with us. And one of the main things that we want to focus on today is we're going to take you on a journey of one of the PBCC's biggest foundational flaws the PBCC have, which is their mistreatment of women and how their hierarchy places the women at the bottom of the totem pole. So we're going to walk you through this. But first, I want to go through and share some of the statistics that I pulled up from our analytics from our podcast. And I want to share that we have had over 1 million impressions on our podcast and over almost 40,000 watch time hours. So that's huge for some. We didn't really know what we were doing. We threw ourselves in this. We are no professionals by any means. We came in this very authentically and organically with just wanting to create a safe space for survivors to come on and tell their story. And we have created over 70 podcasts now and have still some in the vault to go out. And we are very, very, very thankful for all of the survivors and ex-members, professional help that has come on here to spread our message and spread the word of what really goes on inside the PBCC. And I am so grateful of the team that has followed me. So thank you, Lane. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Carman. And to our UK team that came on board, we were so grateful for that help. Our help from Ben. Help me out here, guys. We've had so much help with this in behind the scenes. There's been, even though there's a lot of faces that haven't been shown up front, we have a ton of people helping us in behind. Ex-members that prefer to stay in behind the scenes, which is fine. To all of our mold spies on the inside, we could not do this without you. When we open up our inbox and it's filled with 20, 30 emails from you multiple times during the week, some giving us information, we get a lot of information from you, but a lot of you are giving us the information that the things that we provide to you on the podcast, you've never even heard about yet. So it works both ways, where I know so many of you wait weekly for those podcasts to come out so that you can find out what's actually going on inside where you are. And to a lot of the people who take the chances to give us the information and to record the information, we really appreciate it. I want to reiterate that this movement was never about bashing the PBCC or sitting there trying to take Bruce Hales down. This movement was about opening up a platform for survivors to come on, tell their stories, but to also get the coverage we needed to allow the media, to allow journalists, to allow the police, to allow social services, to allow all those other government agencies to know what was really going on inside there. Because it's not right. It still is not right. And just like the FLDS, it took a movement to get to where they were. Just like the Jehovah's Witnesses, it took a movement to get to where they got to. So we're all working at this together to create a safe space, a mainstream Christian church for our families that are left in there to stay safe in. So even though it takes a lot of exposing and unraveling Bruce Hales and his thinking, his rules, and the way that he portrays what he is doing inside there, it may look to people that that's what we sit here and do, but it's not. We have a larger goal at the end of this tunnel, and that is to create a safe space for people to grow up in. Because what it is now is not a safe space, especially for women and especially for children. I am not negating the men that are inside that they are abused and that go through a lot of things. But for me personally, it is about the females inside there, and it is about keeping the children safe. So I want to tell you the top 5 locations that our podcasts have reached. So we have 2 platforms that we put our podcasts out to. One is on the audio versions, although Spotify does have video too. So we have an Anchor platform that pushes it out to Spotify and Apple and Google, all those other different platforms. And then we have our YouTube. So we have 2 different platforms that we come off of. So our Anchor platform, our top 5 locations through the Anchor platform, number 1 was Australia. Number 2 was UK. Number 3 was Canada. Number 4 was United States. And number 5 was New Zealand. And on the YouTube side of things, UK was number 1. Australia was number 2. Canada was number 3. United States was number 4. And New Zealand was number 5. And the female definitely wins the demographic for watching these. So I assume we know that it's a lot of our viewers come from inside, and I suppose it's the mom sitting at home trying to figure out how they're going to get out of this mess. That is just my assumption. So for the cities, our top 5 cities, so this is going to blow some people away. The first 4 aren't going to, but the 5th one is. So the number 1 city, obviously, no surprise, Sydney, Australia. We know that that's where our number 1 comes from on all angles is Sydney. Our number 2 was London. Number 3 was Melbourne. Number 4 was Perth. And number 5 was Calgary, Alberta. So Richard and I talked about this earlier because I was just shocked. And Richard, you have a good explanation of why it might be Calgary.
Well, it's just speculation, but obviously the PBCC has some kind of organization that monitors all the publicity and monitors all the opposers, as they call them. You know, they're the people who hire the private investigators who do the rebuttals, and they will have an office and representatives in each country where the brethren are to monitor the local situation. And I just wondered if the poor Peeb guy who has to monitor all our stuff is a brother from Calgary. So if it is, have a good day, and I hope you enjoy our content.
Well, I think it's exposed possibly, 2 things possibly here. One, these statistics might have exposed the Brethren's listening station, right? Or where they monitor, right? And my second thing that jumps to mind with Calgary isn't that where the famous Brethren lawyer Gerald Chapur is from?
Well, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And speaking of monitoring, I got to tell you guys a really funny story. The whole Palmerston North podcast that we just put out. Through all of our Facebook posts and our podcasts, we came up with this really catchy name for the situation in Palmerston North, and that was the Palmy Party. Well, I had an insider from the UK tell me yesterday that even as far as the front row brothers that refer to the occasion in Palmy, they refer to it as the Palmy Party. So that tells you how many insiders are watching. They've even accepted our branded name. And He said it was so amazing on a parking lot in the UK to hear a front row brother refer to the Palmerston North meetings as the Palmy Party.
That just gave me a question in my mind. Do you think the Brethren are terrified to say the phrase "get a life" now?
I don't know.
The thing I enjoy,
Probably-
this 1 million impressions. I mean, that's a hell of a lot more impressions than you get for one of Bruce's white books, isn't it?
Oh, they loved that term, didn't they? Did you? I remember always being asked when I was a kid, did you get an impression at the Lord's Supper, which is their Sunday morning communion? And my usual impression was, because it was 6 a.m., was extreme tiredness and lack of attention, and desire to leave were my deepest impressions.
Oh, that's hilarious. You know what will be the interesting thing is when we finally get our merchandise out there with Get a Life on it, and, you know, start seeing the people inside there silently wearing our Get a Life hoodies.
Yes, and if we have people that want to assist us in that, or have contacts in t-shirt design and things like that, please contact us. Please
Yeah,
send
and
us an
all
email.
proceeds will go to the charity once it gets up and going. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to also go over our top 5 episodes through both ways that we put our podcasts out. The one being the one Anchor, which puts it out to all of the audio ones, and then our YouTube. So on Anchor, our top 5 podcasts, the first, number 1, is our very first episode, which is Who Are the PBCC? Number 2 was the Klondike Papers, which was episode number 2. Number 3 was episode 44 with Cassie Davies, which we all know had a huge, that one rocked the boat. And she now has her own podcast coming out. Episode 1 was just released. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you go and check out Cassie Davies' podcast. Number 4 was episode 6 with Christine from New Zealand. It was New Zealand, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Working for the PBCC. So that one made me very happy to see that it was up there. So that makes me realize that they're taking that serious. People are searching that. And when they're looking for a podcast to relate to with where they're working, that one obviously comes up. And then number 5 through Anchor was episode 36 with Ben Woodbury, which we knew, again, also the views were there very, very fast. And through YouTube, our number 1 episode was episode 1 again. Who Are the PBCC? Number 2 was Cassie. Number 3 was Abby, which, again, another series of podcasts that had a ton of information that really rocked the foundation inside the Plymouth Brethren. Number 4 was Ben Woodbury. And number 5 was Beth Seed. So, and again, that was another really, really intense podcast with a lot of abuse that had happened in it. So those were our top 5 podcasts on both sides. I'm really proud of us for the amount of time and effort that goes into this, because it's not just the podcasts. This is hours upon hours of responding to emails, having conversations. I mean, there's some days where I shut my phone off now, just so people know. I do shut my phone off now at 11 p.m. and I try not to touch it till 6 a.m. So I specifically give myself that time, only because the people that are on a different time zone, that's when a lot of stuff comes into us from the other side of the country. But there's days when my poor husband, I mean, we're like 6 a.m. and it goes, and I know Carman can contest to this, where sometimes she does an all-nighter. I cut those out now because I need my sleep for my day job. But the amount of time and effort that goes into this, and a year later, even though we have had moments of, it's a roller coaster. We all 4 of us know what a roller coaster this can be, right? It triggers us. It pulls up wounds and trauma that we've never dealt with. The other day, I was just talking to you guys, and I felt it felt like a 1 million pound magnet came over my body after the Chicago stuff went down and just pulled it to the surface. So I'm a runner. So it is there's often times when I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. Right. But it's because it's so intense. And then my team around me always rallies, pulls me back up, and reminds us why we do this. And so for that, I am super, super proud of ourselves. For a year later, I woke up 3 or 4 days ago with just fires lit. I am lit. I'm back on. It feels like there's more wood in these fires than ever before. And I feel that we're starting off this second year, like with twice as much fuel that we had in the first year. And 3 times the amount of help coming our way now. People reaching out all the time now. What can I do to help? I want to help. What is it? What do you guys need help with? So I think starting year two is going to be far more productive than we had in year one. And year one was very, very productive. So I just think I'm just proud of us. I'm really, really proud of how far we've come.
And I would say that, yeah, it is a great team, not taking away from that at all. But this was Cheryl's idea. I remember it as clear as daylight. We were having this conversation and Cheryl says to me, we need to start our own podcast. And I said, yes.
But then we had the brains behind the name when Richard just sent us the logo. And I'm like, well, that's perfect. Yeah. That's really what we're all trying to attain here. We're all trying to attain how to get a life. We're trying to gain our life back, right? So it kind of all came together. And then I was like, Lane had reached out to me and I really, really clicked with Lane. I was like, I felt this as a brother came back into my life. And I was like, okay, well, Lane, we're doing. And then I was like, okay, well, we need a Simonton on here. We've got to, in order to have them to take it seriously, let's call Carman and see if Carman will Carman come on here. And
the big
Carman was all over it. And then it just grew, right? It really took off. This year, there's a lot of subjects that we haven't covered yet that we tend to cover. We are going to dive into the RRT. That is something that is very much been on the forefront for a long time for us as we've been collecting information. It is a lot to cover. There is a lot of irons in the fire. There really is. We have a lot of fires burning, so be patient with us. We have some a
lot of fires burning and not a lot of fire extinguishers.
Yeah. And we have some recent leavers that have been very key in helping support our ideas. And you know who you are. You know who we're talking about. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know some of you, I know particularly one stays up till all hours of the night sending us stuff. So we really appreciate that help when we have this idea. We know that there's a subject that we need to be presenting. RRT is one of the hugest things that we have coming at us that we know we need to. I know the UK team is going to be doing podcasts on alcoholism. There's a lot of subjects that are going to come forward that we know that we are going to dive into. And we're really excited to collaborate with those and get those out to you.
In the year that we've done this, right, we've already helped people leave, right? Helped them have a place to come and talk to others, right? And to hear stories that kind of confirmed their own and that they knew that they weren't alone. And, you know, I've had some of these people that have recently left literally say your podcast, the podcast you guys are doing, helped us leave, helped us change our minds and see through the curtain and realize that we were being lied to and realize that we didn't believe in this crap with Bruce Hales being some special guy.
I was going to say that is really, I think the biggest thing that we have given and provided for them to see inside there is they have choices. I don't think they realized that the ex-brethren community was as collaborative as it was, right? And having Lindy come forward and launch the Olive Leaf Network in New Zealand, now in Australia, we have Canada and US is being built right now. It's the platform for people to walk out of there into something else is huge. The resources are really, really available, right? And I think those resources have to be this readily available out here, because how Bruce has things inside there when it comes to leaving a business, leaving a family is much harder than when we had to leave.
Yeah.
We didn't have the resources to go out to, but it was easier for us to leave. Now it's kind of flipped where it's much harder to leave in there. There's a lot of mental game and emotional games they've got to get through in order to see, but there's a huge wealth of resources and landing pads that are provided on the outside now.
Most important audience are the people who are still in there. Those are the people I think about every time I go on a podcast, every time I publish something on Facebook. I'm talking to you. You're the people I'm concerned about. Yes, it's very interesting and it's healing, it's therapeutic for ex-brethren. It's a great resource for journalists, but really the people we're speaking to are the people who are still trapped in there, because we understand we've been where you are now and we just want you to get free in the same way that we've got free.
Yeah. And I know Carman's working on a new project right now where she is going, so you're going to have to email her or info.getalife@proton.me. We're not going to tell you where we're putting these for people's sakes, but there will be access more readily available and easily for those inside, that if you have a UBT device, we are making our podcast more readily available so that you can watch these on a UBT device. So you can email Carman. I just realized I don't have my info.getalife@proton.me underneath my name, or email us at our regular group email so that you can get that information and we'll let you know when it is available. But there is a means coming where you can watch these podcasts on a UBT device.
Yeah, so you'll be able to download it and share it within the Brethren WhatsApp network. And so, it takes away the necessity for having a non-Brethren device or running off to the library. But I guess we will, once we've got that up and set up, then we'll be spreading that information around. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
I watched recently, I saw a PBCC, a Brethren, put out a video of a young girl telling how amazing her life was in the church, a young Jamaican girl. And I saw this and I found it really interesting because it kind of shows the power of brainwashing in a way, right? She was happy. She did like her life. She's like, yes, my day consists, getting ready for school, going to school. And then after school, I like to sing. So we do singing and then we hang out with friends. And there's a picture of her sitting like at a picnic table with friends. And then we do some singing and then we hang out and we sit. And then it's like sitting at a park bench. And then we sing and then we hang out and we sing and we hang out. And that was it. Right. And it was the Brethren PR video being like, look how happy and amazing our children is. But if you really look at it, you'll see that it doesn't mean that these children are not happy. But that is all they know. They clearly don't know that there is more to life than the simple things that they're being told makes them happy. Right. They're really
denied the choice. They are denied the choice of what some of those kids could grow up, go to university and be. Like I've said this before, our next huge scientist in there that could find a cure to cancer or find a cure to something could be sitting inside the PBCC and not get to access that. Yeah. And especially the females, right? Like especially those females in there that they don't. I mean, sure, she showed that she was happy, but the poor girl doesn't get to fulfill any other desires other than becoming a wife and having children. And they can say as much as they want to say in there about, that they have important job titles and they have this and they have that. These females are still sitting on the back rows of those churches, and those females still have no say when it comes to their faith.
Whether that
and
girl
I'm not
happy in 10 years' time when she's got 4 young children, an alcoholic husband trying to run the local Campus and Co store, that's really the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a good point. And you know, how do I say this? But the opportunities are just not given to the females at all, the women in the church, right? At least the men have some opportunity where they're pushed into business and creating their own businesses or working for a big business, right? And they're just pushed more into business and being successful in that. And the women in the Brethren have nothing but to look forward to being a mother, right? And volunteering their time at Campus and Co. And I'm not religious, but when I think about it, why would the Creator only have that in mind for them? If he loves everyone equally, he doesn't have any more inspiration. He has a plan for everyone, apparently, but no further plan than motherhood for the women in the Plymouth Brethren. That's it. That's the, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have like, oh, you're going to go do this, or you're going to become a doctor, you'll become a lawyer or scientist or nothing. It's just they have one path. Why? Why is that? It doesn't seem reasonable or sensible to me.
I mean, even an animal with its natural instincts will make a very good mother. You don't need intelligence because it's an instinctive thing. And the fact that women are not allowed to speak or be in any administrative position is really saying to them, you're just a childcare and breeding facility. We don't value your brain. We do not want to hear your opinion, your knowledge, your wisdom on any subject is of no interest to us. You know, cook, iron, wash, produce babies and feed them. I mean, they're just reduced to the level of animals. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
We have Carman actually has done up an incredible slideshow that I want to take us through. Let's go into this. So I'm gonna let you go through this, Carman, and explain what you have set up here.
So basically what I did was look for the top 10 reasons that domestic violence in women is such a huge problem. And in going through all the different studies, Oxfam was a very comprehensive study. It studied 19 different countries, which included Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, the UK. So it included all the countries that Brethren are a huge, concentrated in. But it also included a lot of Muslim countries. And you might say, well, so why would you choose, something that contains Muslim countries? And the thought process behind that is those countries are very similar to Brethren in that they're very high control, male dominant groups. And so it seemed like a good mix to add in. So that's the theory about why we chose this study. So the first reason that domestic violence continues and is such a big problem is that women must be submissive to male family members in all aspects of her life. This has been commented on in a number of different podcasts, and notably from the One School Global admins that we've talked to. And one of the things that they always comment on is submissiveness in gender appears in the teens, in the young married couples, and for the rest of a PBCC woman's life. And we can prove that because we have a quote down here from Bruce Hales. And this is a quote where he has said, being subject to their own husbands, it would be that wives have come under the authority of Christ and he has gained their heart. So there's an influence. The divine center has secured a place in our infections. So that subjection is not being held out as being a difficult thing.
So in other words, like they just continually preach to subject yourself, right? And I remember even hearing that as a kid: subject yourself to God, subject yourself to the man of God, which is Bruce Hales, and subject yourself to the assembly, which is the made up thing in your imagination that exists in the church, and subject yourself to the truth, right? It's all subjection, and the subject yourself to man was the big one to all women in the church.
Yeah.
The number one biggest one was women must be submissive to their husbands.
Mm.
Yes.
And that's where we hear a lot of these domestic violence reports, right? Come to every single one of their stories is they knew that they had to be submissive. They knew that they had to give their husband what he wanted when he wanted it, and you couldn't say no. So I'm not saying every relationship inside the PBCC is like that, but there is a high amount of that in there due to men thinking that they own their wife. And we just recently had a post on Facebook of an anonymous person who had been in a relationship with an ex-member who was male that had shown this authority still, and they were separating over it. From what I gathered from the comments and stuff, that's what was happening.
Mm.
Yeah. And the important thing for people to realize is to be submissive is to offer a certain amount of respect. And yes, there is teaching that wives need to be submissive to their husbands. But the end part of that teaching is as Christ is to the assembly. So yes, there's that thing about being submissive, but in order to be submissive, it's sort of like respect. It's earned. And the important thing to realize is husbands and wives are actually equal. There's things that husbands do that wives don't do, and there's things that wives do that husbands don't do. But God never meant us to be anything less than equal partners in bringing up a household. And that is something that the PBCC has missed and tossed under the carpet, notably, I'm sure, to have better control.
Men are expected to exercise coercive control. We want to exercise that in our families so that if they get in our company, they come under our control because of our spirits, because we have pure minds and we've got pure hearts and we've got pure motives. And that's the influence that keeps the devil out. Ooh. What do they want to exercise in their families? The coercive control? That's what they're saying? Is they need to exercise coercive control over their families, and they want that to get it into their companies? That is something that if you said that in public, right, like to normal people,
especially nowadays,
they would leave that business conference if so. The brethren have to operate in a cult-like environment. They are a cult because if they said those things, right, that are in their white books and all the ministry that they put out, if they put these things out to the public, people would be in an absolute uproar and go, "You guys are absolutely abusive and should be abolished because of the things that you preach hate. You preach hate and control."
Yeah, this is a good point here too, Carman, that you wrote in here. There's tremendous amounts of pressure put on men to control their wives in the PBCC. The women are not viewed as equal partners in a marriage, but instead of a lesser person in need of control. And I mean, that goes right down to even their wearing of their ribbons and stuff, that they need that extra protection. So this is the third one. Men have the right to discipline women for incorrect behavior. Oxfam in their study reveals that there is a strong belief among both women and men that violence is acceptable and even necessary. When used by men to discipline women for not delivering on their perceived responsibilities or when their behaviors transgresses social norms. So this is a quote from Bruce. Even in the training of a family and getting a family organized in the right way in regard of the assembly, there's an aspect of what's military that can't be overlooked. Copyright Bruce Hales.
Oh boy, are you wrong there, Bruce. Sorry.
Like, could you imagine Could you imagine going to, I'm just going to put this out this. You're going to a Sunday church service, say at your local Baptist church with, 3,000 people. It's a big Baptist church. And this quote gets read out into it. What do you think would happen? I guarantee
I'm
it would
sorry.
not be pretty.
But what, like, my question is, what the fuck does Bruce Hales know about the military? I'm sorry, I still don't think he can do a push-up, right? There's an aspect of what's military that can't be overlooked. Are you speaking from experience, Brucey? Because last I heard you were an accountant.
Yeah. Not to mention coming from a cult that have been non-combatants in both world wars, it's a little rich, but
It is.
Yeah.
So the Oxfam survey point number 4 of the causes of domestic violence is that sexual harassment is normal. And it says dominant patterns around male sexual entitlement over women's bodies contribute to sexual harassment and other forms of sexual violence. In the Oxfam study, a young woman stated, "I believe that everything arises from the fact that men see us as sexual objects and as persons that they need to fill their sexual needs." And then this is a really amazing quote from Bruce Hales. "Wives are great stuff when they know where they fit. Absolutely priceless. Was it FER said, it's a provision, or it's like a provision or a facility for the enjoyment of eternal life." So I don't know how low you can go, Bruce, but to refer to your wife as a facility for enjoyment, I mean, you wouldn't even call your dog that. So
this one makes me
fucking
so
disgusting.
angry. This one just like boils my blood. And this is just 2007. This is like,
Yeah, a facility
Wow.
for the enjoyment of eternal life. That will get you a whole night in the goat barn and no supper for at least a week. I mean, it shows the ignorance. It shows the ignorance.
and I want our listeners and viewers to remember this point of number 4 for a video clip we're going to show you later on. I just want you to remember this, because this, when they talk about Aberdeen not happening, and then we have this being said in ministry in 2007, and then we have testimony of a video that we're going to show you later on, is I just hope that the people inside there can realize that yes, Aberdeen happened. Yes, if you look with a microscope through all the ministry and through his quotes and through things that people have said out here, that you can put all those pieces together and realize, yeah, I need to get the hell out of here. That this is a business that promotes extreme sexual misconduct in every part of the sector that it can go around. And when I mean sexual misconduct, I mean misconduct and in every way, shape, or form. Pedophilia, domestic violence, covering it all up, right? Like, it's walking through when I was reading what you wrote in here, Carman, I was like, what a breeding ground. What a breeding ground for such horrific abuse. And if you are a female, a wife, someone who's not married, and you have children, you need to get the hell out of there. That's all I have to say. And I hope that this podcast, when you look through it, you start figuring out a way that this might be possible.
And for the outsiders, imagine how sad it is to not be able to divorce a man that says, yeah, they're good stuff when they know where they fit, right? Like, and they don't even have the option to divorce. I mean, they can if they really wanted to, but they don't even know how.
So number 5 in the Oxfam study of reasons that domestic violence continues. Women experience violence because they are dressed provocatively. Among the countries involved in this study, it is common to see communities blaming the actions of women to justify male sexual entitlement and violence. Victim shaming is a coward's way. If someone dressed up as a cow, are they asking to be made into hamburger patties for the next barbecue? Of course not. It's a simple matter of self-control and self-responsibility, both of which are not found very often in the males in the PBCC.
When you listen to this video that we're going to play later, again, I want you to remember this quote. I want you to remember this topic, because it's just disgusting at how vulgar the language is when it comes to the men, the teens, the amount of things that have been plopped on our lap that just recently people have overheard people talking about women and about, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific that this shit gets covered up.
Yeah, and even like male students in one school global talking to and about their female teachers.
Yeah.
Number 6, all women should become mothers. Wow. Violence against women and girls is rooted in the patriarchal power imbalance between men and women, in the dominant belief that men protect and provide for and have authority over their family, and good women prioritize their family's health and well-being. It's very attractive. This is Bruce Hales' quote. It's very attractive when the young women attached to their husbands, attached to their children, diligent in homework. They are attached to the family position and committed to it and diligent in it. This is just makes your stomach turn, right?
Just feel like we're back in like the early 1900s when, women's rights haven't come in yet. And that's what this feels like we're fighting for. I feel like we are fighting for the women's rights inside the PBCC right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's prioritize their family's health and well-being, right? Like it's like they're like, I remember hearing the words about the woman's duty or the wife's duty in the church, right? And it was like, what is this duty? It was kind of, just assumed is to stay at home, make babies. That's her duty, and make sure that he's happy and you have those meals ready for him when he comes home, because otherwise they have authority over you. So who knows?
Of course, another interesting point here is that in the PBCC, it's very important that women become mothers, because no one is going to join that bunch. So all of their members, they have to breed them. It's a captive breeding program. And it makes them very unique in the, maybe ultra-Orthodox Jews, possibly. But I mean, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they are very extensive in recruiting new members. In the PBCC, they're absolutely dependent on all these big families, on the children, because that's the next generation of people for the elect vessel to exploit. They need them to work in their factories.
Because you can't get people to join, because convincing an adult of these awful rules and teachings that they have, no normal, capable thinking adult would want to join that. That's why they can't recruit, and they have to procreate.
Exactly. And of course, the other issue that comes up is, it's lovely to have children in a controlled way. But I mean, think of these brethren families where, take my own ex-mother-in-law, for example. She had 11 pregnancies. She had 10 children. She had extremely high blood pressure and was on a heavy dose of antidepressants and alcohol, and suddenly dropped dead before she was 60.
Wow.
And that's not an uncommon story in the brethren. I mean, some people, want to have a very large family, but, most people would prefer to, have a manageable 2-3 children, well spaced out. That's not an option. I mean, reproductive rights are non-existent in there, completely non-existent.
For a long time, they didn't allow birth control. Isn't that right? And then that might have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as I know, that's. I mean, yeah, we know a lot of people do use birth control, but as far as I know, that you still get in trouble if you were found out.
Yeah, it's done behind the scenes. Yeah, it's totally done. It's not. It's they still don't allow it. It's just done behind the scenes. Yeah. Okay. So this is point number 7 of this study. Girls are valued as wives, not as individuals. Oxfam noted, for girls, the social expectation to demonstrate submissiveness can lead to early marriage, which is also used to control their sexuality. And this is especially noted in the frequent guests that have spoken of the threats hurled at them in choosing a path free on PBCC control. You will be pregnant and unmarried in a matter of months. Your daughters will lose their purity immediately upon leaving. So this is something that is very much thrown in the faces of the females if you do want to leave, right? They do put those out there. Yet we have this exact same thing happening in there. I mean, I get so angry at the hypocrisy of some of these statements that they throw out there, because how many females, how many people are in there? I would love to know the actual account of how many people have been sexually abused in there or been sexually violated, right? Let's just start with that. Just sexually violated in their early years and then into their teens. I have this theory that the reason why Bruce is so hell-bent on bringing up Aberdeen and trying to make sure that this next generation doesn't believe that Aberdeen is true is because if this next generation was to truly dive into Aberdeen and see it for what it was, along with everything that we're exposing, I think he knows that he would lose a lot of people, or a lot of people would start talking about the sexual abuse they've gone through, the sexual violations that they've gone through. I firmly believe that his point of doing this is that he does not want the sexual abuse uncovered that happened within JT Jr.'s time and what JT Jr., how he treated women, right? I don't think he wants them to know about it. I mean, it's the perfect way. He's got this new generation blindly following him, making him billions of dollars of cash coming at him. He doesn't want them finding out of one of the biggest cracks that this whole system has. It is Aberdeen. It is Aberdeen. And we do hope to do an Aberdeen podcast on just the facts. We want to lay out all of the evidence that is put in black and white for every person that's in there to watch and make your own choice. That will be coming soon. But I think Bruce is really trying to cover his tracks on not letting, especially the females in there, really see how it started way back then and it's continuing on. Because now it's just an everyday thing, right? Women get treated like crap in there, but they just take it because to them, it's normal for them. It's absolutely normal for them. I mean, we hear of recent leavers when they find like an actual partner out here that's all they don't know what to do with it. I mean, I didn't know what to do with it when my husband came along. I mean, this man loved me in a way that I had never witnessed before. I had never witnessed that being taken care of like that. That was nothing in 17 years that I'd been in there had ever seen. So I think he's got to create this narrative of what would happen to you out there. He's got to keep Aberdeen completely covered up so that these women can't see how absolutely demeaning of a place that they live in.
I want to attack two little things here in that slide. First off, you'll be pregnant and unmarried in a matter of months. Nothing illegal about that. Lots of people choose to be pregnant and unmarried. So that's just a sin thing in their mind, right? And then their other thing, your daughter will lose their purity immediately upon leaving. So what does that mean? Maybe their daughter will be at a Taylor Swift concert and kiss another 15-year-old and get their first kiss. That's losing their purity in the brethren, right? And that's these sins. They're terrible sins. It's a sin to be unmarried and have a child. But it's not. That's just a made up thing. Anyway, that was my little rant.
But it is true. Their point about that what they consider losing their purity is like those are things that happen in the everyday world out here all the time with getting your first kiss at 15 and in my case in this, it makes me just sad because they're telling these to people in there when I guarantee how many percentage of these people were violated by some old guy that shouldn't have had his hands where he had them.
Yeah.
Again, look forward to the video we're going to show you. We're like really building up to this video because it's.
Heterosexuality is the only sexual orientation that is acceptable. Discrimination and marginalization make some women and girls more likely to experience violence. This includes women and girls with disability, divorced women and widows, sex workers, and lesbian and trans women. And we know anything besides heterosexuality is a complete no-go in the PBCC. As frequent guests have proven over and over, gay men are immediately thrown out of the brethren.
I witnessed this hatred, right? I witnessed this as a child. It wasn't just teaching that it was wrong. They taught a hatred of it. I remember them speaking of a hatred of it. It was disgusting and traumatic the way that they talked about homosexuality in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. It really was traumatic, disgusting, and evil.
They call it satanic, right? Like that's the words they use about it, that it's satanic. Yeah. And I'm like, it's such old school, so old school. Again, we're fighting for these freedoms that out here in this world, we conquered. I mean, obviously right now in society, there's a lot of huge stuff going out in the LGBTQ community. Let's put that aside. But just the basic stepping out as a gay man, those rights were won, or a gay person, those rights were won how many years ago, right? Like it's so cave-like in there. And that's what's so sad is that when you are born into this and you know nothing else but what you are born into, it's such a human right that is taken away from them. It is such a human right of them from them taken away. The way that their phones are blocked, websites are blocked. These people can't research things about themselves. And that's why I am so happy that we were able to really pull off these podcasts and get them out there because so many people have felt validated. Even though that a lot of these people haven't left yet, there is hundreds of people in there, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And we know Bruce knows that. He knows his time is coming. And I think a lot of those people who are closeted gay men and women that don't have a way to come out, having this validation and being able to know what it's called, being able to know that there's people that have left, that have come out and are very successful. And I think it's just very inspiring for them in there.
I mean, seeing as we're talking about women's rights particularly, we haven't yet had anyone on the podcast who has been kicked out because of being a lesbian. But we do know that there are members of the ex-brethren community who have been mistreated and have been kicked out for that reason. And I'm sure there are lots and lots of people who are in that. I mean, to be a gay man in the Brethren is bad enough. To be a gay woman in the Brethren is even worse, because you've got the whole kind of oppression and control thing about being a woman, and then you've got this hatred against gays on top of that. I mean, that's a really, really terrible situation to find yourself in. Divorced women have less value. Oxfam notes, divorced women and widows face particular forms of violence because of discriminatory beliefs around the roles and value of women. Divorce was up until recently an absolute forbidden practice in the PBCC. In some situations where divorce because a spouse had left and remarried outside the PBCC in the last 20 years, the rules have relaxed a bit, and these people have been allowed to remarry. Up to then, it was completely forbidden. So, yeah, I mean, this is a big one, a big topic, because divorce is forbidden, except in the sense that if you did go ahead with a divorce, one or other spouse would be kicked out. So women who are in a sort of domestic violence situation, they don't have the option of divorcing but remaining within the brethren. So if they do go ahead with a divorce, they will be excommunicated, and then of course they will lose their children, their parents, everyone they've ever known. So it's a huge discrimination, and so people are trapped in these abusive relationships where, outside in the world at large, yes, abusive relationships happen, but there is a legitimate and respectful way to escape it. But inside there, people are trapped until, it's a life sentence. So the other strange thing that happens with divorces in the PBCC is that if a husband leaves the brethren or is kicked out, the woman is then encouraged to divorce him or told to divorce him, even if she doesn't want to. And then the woman acquires this kind of strange status in there. They're called a widow for the truth, to sort of imply that this is a person who has chosen the fellowship over and against her own husband. And it actually gives them a kind of, they're specially prayed for. But they're also discriminated in the sense that it's said in the brethren that it's a great privilege to have the Lord's Supper, or Holy Communion, as they call it, in your house. And when they have special occasions, and a lot of brethren are staying in a particular congregation, they will hold Holy Communion in a number of the houses, in the brethren's houses, because they don't have enough meeting halls to do that. But if you're a widow for the truth, you can't have Holy Communion in your house because your household is incomplete. It's referred to as a broken household.
Are you serious?
Wow, I didn't even know that.
I didn't know that either.
That's totally true, because we never like there was widows for the truth in my congregation, and we never ever had the Lord's Supper, as they call it there. So I can attest to that. Wow.
And widows especially, and we heard that last podcast that we did with Julie, her mom, her dad wasn't there, and so she was a widow for the truth. But widows too, their households are definitely discriminated against because that woman has no voice. So every decision that's made in the meeting, the brothers all have this chance to pick up the mic and add their 10 cents worth. If you lived, like if you don't have a husband or don't have a male in the house, you get zero input into all the decisions. And you're always looked down on because there's not a male in the house.
Yeah, that's very true.
Number 10, let's stop thinking it's normal. Every day and everywhere in this world, gender bias has become a normalized thing. Stop this. It is not normal and should never be viewed as such. Jesus, in all his words and deeds, left us an example to treat women as equals with men, never subordinated or restricted in role. His treatment of women as equals defied the judicial, social, and religious customs of his day on judicial matters where the women's rights were curtailed, such as regarding adultery and divorce. He treated men and women equally. When will we start to see mainstream Christian churches start to model this behavior, drop the gender biases, and accept women as equal partners in marriage instead of inferiors? Yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't know. Personally, I think it's rooted in religion, some of these problems. But Jesus did preach equality, and it's just not preached in the church. So it's just another example of them not following their own book that they love so much that they, say that their entire lives are guided by that. They're very proud of that fact, yet they do not follow it themselves. So I find that very interesting.
You made an excellent comment, Lane, when you said it's rooted in religion. And actually, these behaviors are rooted in religion. And religion is organized religion. It's not Christianity. It is, they claim to be following the Bible and they claim to be Christianity, but they're not. They're an organized religion and they don't even always follow Christian principles. So you're exactly right. It is something that comes out of religion, and religion is nothing more than a proud group of people pretending to believe certain things, but their actions say otherwise.
Oh yes, this was so good. So this is the inside of a meeting hall.
That's a little triggering, seeing that all of a sudden pop
Right?
up on the screen. I'm like, whoa. Whoa.
So I'm like, I have to ask you, Carman, is this actually what it looks like when Bruce Hales comes and sits down here? Is that his little water and stuff?
I don't know that. This is a picture that it was in the Auckland meeting room. From my understanding, he has actually had a mic stand. Like you see that boom mic there? Yeah. He's had a mic stand modified so that it holds his glass of water. So I doubt if it's on a little blue table like that.
Glass of water. Yeah.
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 Vodka looks like water.
Modified. He has one for when he's sitting down, and they've even modified one now so that if he stands up, he has a fresh glass of water when he stands up, and it's right up there, right beside where he's standing.
Holy cow. No. That looks like a cooler sitting there. I mean, why would you have a cooler next to where Bruce Hales was sitting, I wonder? Can't imagine. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just want to give the listeners a quick description of this, those who aren't viewing the video. So what we've got here is a picture of inside the church. They're in the center of the dish. So think square building with a dish on the inside and rows of seating and benches going down into the center dish.
Circular.
And then, circular. Sorry. And the leader sits in the center circle. And the women have to sit on the back rows, and the men sit on the inner parts of the circles, and it has to be separated. And it's really culty. Like if you look at this picture and you've never seen anything culty before, you do not see a church in this photo. You do not see a cross on the wall or any kind of decoration or anything. It just looks like a cult building.
It's very satanic looking.
For anybody that has gone to a mainstream Christian church, and in Sevier County, there's probably 40 or 50 of them, all different kinds, Catholic, Lutheran, evangelical, Protestant, whatever. Almost every mainstream Christian church, families sit together. There's not this hierarchy in the seating. But the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church doesn't allow their members to sit together as families. They pull their men out and stick them in the front rows, therefore to reinforce this family position where men are more important than women. And the women sitting on the very back rows, what you would notice if you could get in there really close is there are no microphones back there. So the man sitting on the very front row there can take a meeting and he can be yelling at you, and you're sitting on the very back row as a sister. And it will be undeniably about you, because I've had this happen many times. The meeting, there is no doubt in anyone's mind that the meeting was directed at you, but as a sister on the back row, there is no mic, and you are not allowed to pick it up and make a comment. You have to suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah, I mean, people outside may not realize, but women are not allowed to verbally participate in any of the occasions at all. The only thing they can do is select a hymn. So the only female voice you will hear in a Brethren church would be someone saying something like 127 verse 3 very quietly, and then a brother will pick up the microphone and repeat it so it comes through the PA system so everyone can hear. And that's it. That's the only contribution they're allowed to make. or rather, there's one exception. There's one time in my life when I actually heard a woman speaking in a brethren meeting room, and it was a young mother who had had an affair and had to publicly confess it in church, in front of the entire congregation, in front of her children, in front of all her peers. And that was the only time I heard a woman speaking in a PBCC meeting room.
And this
That
right
is
here,
public shaming. Public shaming.
Yeah.
this picture right here is what needs to change with this church, this cult. This is where the change has to be made, Bruce. Females need to be sitting with their spouses and their kids or whoever they choose to, and they need to be able to pick up a mic and say what they want to say. And I know that scares the shit out of you because you know how feisty females can be. And another thing I want to point out here is you look at this picture and they talk about, that's their word that I've really, that's been coming forward lately, is how they're calling everything satanic that everybody on the outside does. This is the most satanic picture you could ever see with these kinds of benches. Everything is in a circle. I don't think they realize how satanic their practices are. Everybody sits in a circle, women at the back, men in the front. They don't realize altars that they pray over every Sunday morning. They just do not understand how satanic and cult-like their practices are.
Particularly when it comes to the prayer meeting, when they're sitting around on the front row and they all solemnly, all the men take in turns to stand up and pray for the death of people who are opposed to Bruce Hales.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, short of actually having voodoo dolls, it's about as good as you can get, isn't it?
This is the part lately that's really, really fired me up and aggravated me, of just hearing people's the word satanic coming back. And I've been holding back on this for a long time. And it's just aggravated. This picture, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, if anybody was to walk in and witness what an actual service was like in there, they would walk out and be like, that was the most satanic thing I ever experienced. 100%.
Creepy.
It is.
I had an outsider recently that saw them, saw a group of them. And she told me, she goes, Lane, what is with, they were so creepy. They were all wearing white, you know? And at first I was like, oh yeah, Sunday. It was Sunday. Yeah. And she was just so creeped out by seeing them all wearing white. Right. And she was like, it was so culty looking. And I'm like, yep, that's because they are one.
And like most churches don't have circular auditoriums, right? But you go to anything satanic, everything's done in a circle.
Interesting.
Right? It's just, there's so many, sitting back and reviewing this lately, I've just been really, wow, my mind is being blown with how many satanic practices they have, and they don't realize what they're doing. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe their ancestors knew what they were doing. Maybe some of those people, I mean, we've talked about Massimo Intervene being part of their community, coming in and out. I think there's an elite group that knows what goes on in this cult. I 100% do, just from what I've experienced. I do think that there is. I don't think everybody knows what's going on. So I'm just letting you know that they use a circle. More energy is gathered, more power is gathered. So they believe when it's done in a circle. So that's why you don't see this in other mainstream Christian churches. You just don't.
They have insanely creepy practices.
They do.
Issues created by extreme gender bias. So there's a number of issues that are created with these extreme gender biases. Number one, reports of sexual abuse due to all men priests. And in that, the PBCC, when they go and speak to someone that has made a mistake or whatever, they refuse to include women in their priestly visits. And one of the things that is a huge problem is the number of young girls that have come forward and said they've been abused by the all-men priests that come and talk to them when they've made mistakes. They've opened themselves up by not including God's pattern of men and women together as equal partners in a marriage or equal partners in life. By excluding women, they have left themselves open for a huge liability.
So if you do
Number
decide,
two.
Bruce, to start including women in your priestly visits, make sure you give them a voice. Because we notice you're creating a trend with watching our podcast and then making these very band-aided fixes. But I just want to know that if you are a female that gets invited to a priest, make sure you also exercise your authority to have a voice in that priestly visit.
Number two, extreme discomfort of females discussing sexual abuse and gender issues with all male priestly teams. And this one is a big one. And I know, that we've had so many young sisters come forward and say, these two men came over and talked to me and asked me all these in-depth questions about the sexual abuse. It's completely unacceptable. A mainstream Christian church would use a male-female partner in a situation like that, or they would use several sisters. This kind of priestly activity should never be done on young females by a couple of old men. That is completely unacceptable, and it is completely abusive.
And even when police do their police investigations, if you're reporting sexual abuse, right? Often if it's a female, you'll get a female police. I had a female police, but my team that went around to other people that were included in some of the Maple Creek stuff, it was a male female police team, right? And that's literally that's what it should be. Yeah.
I'm just going to put this out here. Sorry, but when reporting abuse, okay, and talking about very, very traumatic things like this, in my opinion, unless your priest in whatever church you belong to has specific training, then I think you could bypass that altogether, go to police and go to therapy and maybe a medical professional of some type, right, to get counseling. I'm sorry, but a lot of these priests do not have the qualifications or the training to deal with this, unless they've gone through it, right?
None of them do. I mean, in a mainstream Christian church, youth counselors would go through extensive training as to how to deal with these things, how to speak to people, how to understand trauma. How many brethren priests have had that training? None at all. Yeah, I meant churches in general, but yes, none of the brethren have. And I've talked about this before. I'll reiterate it again. You don't have to speak to these fucking priests. It's not a legal obligation. And if you do, okay, if you do feel the pressure that you do need to speak to them, I know it might go against your morals or something, but consider it at least. You don't have to feel guilty about lying to them. These are not good people. They are not there for your best interests. They're there for the assembly, as they would call it, and the truth, and protecting Bruce Hales. Yeah. Feel free to bullshit to them. Cover up those sins, right? If it's not illegal, they don't need to know about it. And if it is illegal, go to the police and confess it.
Yeah, and you can also, in everybody's town, there are social services there, right? So if you trust that method, you can call up social services and request social services to be present, right? I think the thing is, what happens inside there is that these people just don't know that there's these choices and these options, right? If the police scare you, if say a medical professional scares you, social services, there are very kind people within social services. There really is. I mean, some of the best therapists that I've gone through, that's what they just have a social service degree. And so they're trained for that kind of thing. They really are trained for that. So you can look or reach out to us an email, say, hey, I'm in this locality or I'm in this area. Can you find me social services that you need help with? We'll help you out with that. Okay, go ahead.
Number 3, household dysfunction is because all decisions were made by men. And we talked about this in the Widows and the Assembly, or Widows for the Truth. Household dysfunction because households that don't have a man in them They get zero representation in all decisions that are made. Right down to the Sunday breaks, you get no say in who comes to your house, who gets placed at your house for a meal. You just get a phone call and you get told you're having thus and such at your house for dinner, and there's no input. If you don't have a male in your house, you get zero choice. Number 4, religious abuse, because the sisters were not allowed to speak in the meeting when the entire meeting was an attack on them.
Yeah.
And that's what we spoke about before, right? They don't even give mics to the back rows for the women. So there's not even an opportunity for them to stand up for themselves or say, excuse me, that doesn't sound right. Like that's not even a question in the minds of them, honestly, because they're just so controlled.
This was a huge issue in Maple Creek. I remember witnessing and having to sit through these where they would just, it was such horrific intimidation, such horrific abuse that would happen.
And so cowardly. I mean, these are like grown men, big grown men, just publicly tearing apart women who were effectively gagged, so they couldn't possibly answer back in any way. I mean, what a pathetic and cowardly and unmanly way to proceed.
Yep. Bullying. It's straight up bullying.
Yeah. But it's like bullying someone who's tied to a chair and gagged. That's the level of bullying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. My favorite, I got to tell you this story. My favorite in Maple Creek, we had an entire meeting that was focused on moi. I can't imagine why. But dear old Uncle Dudley Boyer, and I'm going to use his name because he can't fight me now, took this meeting on how Lot's wife was turning into a pillar of salt. And the entire hour was directed at me that I was turning into a pillar of salt. And I was so livid by the end of the meeting because, of course, I couldn't say anything back. And I had 4 little kids sitting beside me, and Rick had one down beside him. And I just remember before even the last hymn was given out, I had put everything back in my diaper bag. And as soon as the prayer was done, I was up and out of there. And I remember hitting the door probably a little bit harder than I should have. And the bar went smack on the door. And I got outside and Rick come running out there and he's like, "Are you all right, honey?" And it had started to rain. And I remember sticking my arms out like this. And I said, "I am not all right, but damn it, I'm not a pillar of salt. Because see, the rain's hitting me and I'm not melting."
If I could make a really bad pun, would you classify that as verbal assault?
Yes, verbal assault. Yes.
That's hilarious.
And I stood there and the raindrops literally sizzled as they hit my skin.
Or should we say a lot of verbal assault?
Yes, a lot of verbal assault.
And
I remember him saying,
no more dad jokes.
"No, honey, you're not salt. You're sugar. See, you're clumping."
But that's true. But that's how they did it. I remember so many times after a meeting. I mean, I was a teenager. I did that where as soon as the last prayer, I'd be the first one out and hit that door as hard as you could on the way out. I mean, the way they treated females. And I mean, from what we hear inside there, it's no different, right? I mean, they're trying to make it look like, oh, the ecosystem needs these sisters. They've tried changing the wording. The thing is you can't sit there and apply these little tiny band-aids to these big, huge cracks into the foundation, because what's happening inside localities and inside homes is still the same thing. So going to a UBT seminar and talking about how the ecosystem needs these sisters, or you're responding to a news article on how good you treat these women and how they have a specific place in the ecosystem, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's absolutely a bunch of bullshit. So, yeah.
Number 5, lack of commitment to new rules because the sisters had no say. They were to be silent. Yeah. So this is just a sort of a memo for Mr. Bruce, that if he would allow the sisters to have a little bit of say when he brought out new rules, he might find there was a whole lot more commitment to them. Just my observation.
This is all free advice, Mr. Bruce. We won't be sending you an invoice.
Oh, I am.
Oh, and this is a good one from the Palmy Party. There is a lack of genuine care and compassion because, generally speaking, the maternal side reflects that. And because the maternal side is always silenced and not involved, there's a lack of genuine care and compassion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, this comes back to the priestly thing. I mean, the priestly shouldn't happen anyway. The whole concept is warped. But if you had a female priest, I am sure you would get a lot more care and compassion than with the trusty old man.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you say, we want to prove gender bias. So we did a little bit of research and we pulled up the Canadian school trustees. Actually, we pulled up all the trusts. And what we noticed is out of 45 board members, secretaries, trustees, and directors, there is not a single female on the board across Canada. Does that smell like gender bias?
Could just be a coincidence.
I mean, it's typical behavior for the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. I mean, I thought they made it very clear, the Brethren, that all their females in the ecosystem are now equally working for Campus & Co., right? They don't have time to do anything else because they're just so busy working for the assembly at Campus & Co.
Yes. Except, of course, they don't get paid. That's another issue, but we'll get on to that.
Yeah, that's our next one.
So let's go with Richard's. It could be just a coincidence. Oops. We also located all the meeting room trusts. We believe we found the biggest percentage of all the meeting room trusts across Canada, with $50.8 million in assets, 100 trust members, directors, secretaries, and board members. Not a single female. I wonder if this is more evidence of gender bias.
Maybe just a little, yeah.
I think we might be on to something, Carman.
It doesn't seem like coincidence anymore.
100 members.
So women referred to in the Bible and Christian service. Number 1, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, ministered to Jesus. Women in John 4 left her water pot and went into the city and saith to the man, come see a man that told me all things. Evangelism.
Euodia and Syntyche, help those women which labored with me in the
gospel. Philippians.
In the gospel. So Paul recognized Euodia and Syntyche as 2 women that helped him and labored with him in the gospel. Jesus called all his disciples together and pointed out the poor widow. And that was when he was collecting all the money from all the rich guys. And the poor widow just put in her 2 mites. And lo and behold, he recognized that she put in more than any of the men around her. Number 5, Paul commends Phoebe, which she was a servant of the church. Number 6, Paul commends the church to greet Priscilla and Aquila, his helpers in Christ.
In that order.
Yeah. In that order, yes. Yeah. Number 7, when Jesus entered a certain village, Martha received him into her house. Lo and behold, she was only a woman in the house, and Jesus felt good enough to stay in her house, even though there wasn't a man in the house. You can't have a Lord's Supper in the house when there's not a man in the house. But Jesus could stay in the house when it was only Martha.
Yep.
Aquila and Priscilla took Apollos to them and expounded the way of God more exactly. Anna, a prophetess, a daughter of Phanuel, worshipped God by fasting and praying. Number 10, the woman that left her water pot. Many of the Samaritans believed on him because of her testifying.
Wow.
Number 11, Deborah was known as a compassionate leader of Israel. And I thought this was interesting. She's the only woman judge mentioned in the Bible. I don't think you'd find a brethren woman as a judge, but there was a woman in the Bible that was a judge, the only judge in the land, and she was the leader of Israel.
Absolutely. Yep.
Number 12, Miriam, a prophetess and Moses' sister, and she saved him from being killed by Pharaoh.
So
Hey, I got to throw my atheism in there. Hold on a second. Not one of the books of the Bible, not even one, is written by a female. It's all written by dudes. Just saying.
There probably were some, but someone deleted them at some point, some old guy. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very clear from those Bible quotes that women clearly did speak, and they taught, and they prophesied, and they spoke to men, and they preached the gospel to men. And the Bible is full of these prominent women. I mean, anyone who's been brought up in the Brethren, or let me rephrase that, anyone who reads the Bible will be able to reel off names of prominent women in the Bible. Now, how many names of prominent women in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church can you think of?
And how many can you find in the White Book?
Exactly. None. Absolutely none. Where are the Deborahs? Where are the Miriams, the Annas, the Priscillas? They're not there. They're completely silenced. They're gagged. They can't give a testimony. They can't prophesy. They can't preach the gospel. It's a complete denial of everything that's in the Bible.
Yeah. And Bruce is supposedly their Paul. So, Bruce, let's get back to the pattern. Read Romans, I believe it's Romans 1 and verse 1 through 16. In those verses, Paul calls out 10 different people that helped him along the way. And guess what? 7 of those were women.
Wow.
So, Bruce, in your ministry, let's find 7 women mentioned in your ministry in the next, couple of white books or so.
Well, there you are, Bruce. That's your next reading sorted out for you.
Yeah, you're supposed to be the Paul of the PBCC. So let's go by the Pauline pattern.
Yeah. I think it's time we got rid of the Paul and got a Pauline instead. That would be an improvement.
Oh, wow. I'm just reading this next one. I didn't get this far. Yeah, let's go into this.
Sample of gender bias. Sisters can't cut brothers' hair. I didn't know that, actually. Sisters can't cut their hair. Yeah, knew that. Sisters can't cut boys under 7. I didn't know about this. So
this is actually the policies for the barber shops that are inside Campus & Co. And if you read down the procedures, you will find these 3 samples of gender bias in the policies at the Campus & Co. Wow. In the policies, no sisters are allowed to cut the brother's hair. No sisters are allowed to have haircuts, which we knew that one, but and sisters can only cut boys' hair under the age of 7.
I got a question. Sorry. What happens? What happens to their hair the day after their 8th birthday? Does something?
Good point. Good point.
Does it start sinning? Is there sin in the hair? Too much male sin? It's leaking out of the head? What the fuck happens to the hair at 8?
But it is bizarre, and the only explanation I can think of is that by the time a boy is 8, he's regarded as having sufficient kind of masculine qualities that it would be disrespectful for a woman to cut his hair. It would be... What other explanation is there?
There is a lot of girls in there that cut their hair. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that go against this. I mean, because you look at those pictures of them, and there's a lot of sisters that have cut their hair. So, I mean, I can't believe that this is on there. And yeah,
and
I see another one there that I've got a little question about. And I think I have the answer. So, no coloring or tinting to hair. So I remember this. Yeah, you weren't allowed to tint your hair. Now, I think I figured out why. So you know how the females, the sisters in the Brethren, have to wear scarves, right? And I was told that this was specifically so angels could identify them from the other nasty civilians that are all going to burn in hell, right? So I think if you dye your hair, the angels can't recognize you anymore.
We've missed you, Lane. You should come on more often.
Yeah, that could be totally possible.
Yeah.
Like a detective on this.
You are. A detective that's not going to get paid yet.
Yeah.
Good old Campus and Co. Good old Campus and Co. They've given us some really good ammunition. In the Campus and Co. policy handbook, we read where the one of the health and safety concerns is where we can exceed to ensure the safety of our largely female volunteer base. Did you know
Wow.
Campus and Co. stores have one paid employee? The rest of it is run 100% on volunteer labor.
They misspelled slave labor.
And almost 100% of that is women. It's the sisters that are supposed to be at home taking care of their houses.
Yeah.
They get drafted to go in and run the Campus and Co.
And do you know how the drafting is done? This is also in we were sent this in their policy manual. The way they draft people to run the Campus and Co. stores is they put your name on a rota. They don't ask you first. They put your name on the rota, and if you can't go, it's your responsibility to find a replacement. Now, if that's not coercive control, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't sound very volunteering to me.
Yeah, they definitely missed the quotes off the volunteer.
Yeah. And if you try to get out of it, you will get a little conversation, and they will explain that your volunteer labor, you're working for Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I mean, we have
Rude.
female insiders that talk about not wanting to go and work here. It's not volunteer. It is completely coercive control of making them go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I talked to an ex-member that would say that if they didn't or couldn't get the appointment or they couldn't make it that week, they would just get harassed and harassed. Oh, we missed you. Why didn't you show up? Why weren't you there? Right. So they just get pushed and pushed and pushed to volunteer. It's being voluntold is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
So this is a PBCC rebuttal to a news article. Many women are business owners. PBCC denies that women have a lesser status. In fact, the role of women is very important, including direct involvement in the Lord's Supper.
Oh, great. They get to bring the bread to the one communion a week. What a big responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to people who don't know, the only role the women have in the communion service is that they put the bread and the wine on the table. So they just get up completely silently, place the bread and wine on the table, then go and sit down again. Other than that, the only thing they can do is suggest hymns by just saying a number. So that's a direct involvement in the Lord's Supper. Well, whoopee. I mean, you know, they're just, because people outside don't know what actually goes on, they can make these grand sounding statements. It all sounds very credible. But if people outside knew the facts, they would just be falling over laughing.
Right. And in this article, they say some women would certainly hold critical positions in a business.
Oh.
So you see how they say
right.
some women. I mean, we know that this is just a bunch of absolute BS, right?
Well, I mean, there's an interesting point here, because this is a very good example of telling the truth to hide the truth, because they say many women are business owners, and that is true in the sense that the way the Brethren's tax avoidance scheme works is that women are actually shareholders in the business. So if the husband owns a business, on paper, in the shareholding, his wife will also be an equal shareholder or a slightly smaller shareholder. And the reason for that is they then divide their income that they draw is divided between the two of them. So it comes into a lower tax bracket. But the woman doesn't have any influence or say in the business or attend the board meeting. They're just nominally on paper a business owner. And that's just for the tax advantage. It's not a question of control or having any influence or say in the business, whatever. So it's telling the truth to tell a lie and give the impression that women are actually running the business. No, technically they own it so that they can split the joint income and pay less tax.
Yeah.
And here are some quotes from Bruce Hales' ministry on their views of women. The beloved sisterhood, you see, their wills have to be broken. When our wills are broken, it's very fine, isn't it? The Lord can use it. The Lord can use us in the testimony. Sisters might say at times, well, what use are we? A very great use, a very great value. The sisterhood being true are very, very great value, and it's through suffering, really. It's through perhaps being overlooked, through being under reproach even. And the next one is, I wouldn't know that the sisters have got much time for meditation, but it would be good if they gave a little time to meditation, I think. I think that would set them free more from their cares. And another one, if the mother is giving into the world, well, she'll find it difficult to make a stand against unsuitable clothing in the daughters. See, young sisters wearing trousers, men's clothing, is totally unsuitable. I don't agree with it ever. Some people say, well, they need it to protect themselves when they're at work. Well, they're doing the wrong job. Our beloved brother was absolutely and utterly uncompromising about it. You can be mocked by the world, but what we're standing by will go through. And this one is from November 2010 in Sydney. I remember he, JSH, went to a business place in 94 in England, and I remember talking to him later, and he was distressed in his spirit. He was overworked, of course, but when he went through, he saw worldly women in trousers, and that distressed him. You know, in a brother's workplace, you see. We don't realize we might be going back to these things just because we haven't got the guts to stand up to it, because we're watching the bottom line. That won't help the bottom line anyhow. All quotations are from Subject Index to the Ministry of B.D. Hales, Bible and Gospel Trust, 2014.
Yeah, so this is a letter by a brother called Edward Steedman, who was present in Aberdeen in 1970 at the famous meetings when JT Jr. was caught in bed with Mrs. Kerr, and he wrote a very long letter detailing. He was actually in the house. He wrote a long letter detailing everything he witnessed, which was it was a very balanced letter. He spoke actually quite affectionately of JT Jr. and referred to, the good things he had done in the past and how he'd helped the brethren. But he said he felt he had to give an accurate account of what proceeded. And so this is just an extract from his very long letter. He runs through the whole meetings, everything that happened in detail. So he says, we arrived at J.A.G.'s house, that's Mr. Gardner's house, on Thursday evening. Mr. Taylor was in bed resting and joined us about 7 p.m. He very soon paid a great deal of attention to the sisters, spoke in a crude way of their having had relations with men, and constantly asked different ones when the results would be. And then in quotes, when is the delivery? He made reference to bras and to take them off and seemed obsessed with the sister's breasts. He made one sister after another sit on his knee. With one especially, he kissed her for minutes at a time, putting his mouth over hers and sucking her in a most peculiar way, all the time fondling and caressing her body, making her husband look out the window while doing so. His tactics with other sisters he wanted was to say that they didn't like his ministry, were not with him and so on, until they came to him. This went on until the Kerrs came about 9 p.m. They should not have been there, but Jim insisted that they stay, so that J.A.G. and his wife had to sleep in most difficult circumstances. When he had gone off to bed, we found the first sister he had handled very upset. We found in the morning she was nearly hysterical through the night.
He's a predator.
Total.
Or was a predator.
Exactly. And this is what Bruce Hales is trying to cover up. I want to now share this video.
There was a bunch of brethren sitting around in the living room of somebody's house, and he had her sitting beside him or on his knee or something, and he was just rubbing these big boobs and quite enjoying himself. And
wow.
My sister, she had already told us that after one meeting, he had been talking with her and he had done the same with her. His explanation was, all these people are making a fuss of me, just showing affection to my, a sister I love. That was his reasoning. that it was okay for him to do it because he loved these ladies.
Wow. So he was doing this quite publicly. This wasn't done behind closed
It
doors.
wasn't done privately. No, it was done publicly.
Wow.
And I remember driving over there with Martha, and the two of us say, what do we do if he does it to you? And I don't think we came to a conclusion. We'll play it by ear, but
Yeah.
we knew it wasn't right.
Yeah.
But he was a man of God, and is the Lord telling him to feel my wife up? It was a dilemma.
Wow. I think it's what they call cognitive dissonance,
Mhm.
where you have to simultaneously believe two things that are contradictory. And
Yeah.
that almost sums up the brethren, is that you have to believe things that you simultaneously know not to be true. So
That was really good. Yeah. This guy, right, to my generation in the church is not as well known, right? Like Aberdeen is so kind of covered up and hidden that a lot of young people in the church, I don't think, really know what a creep and a predator this guy was. Like I didn't know all these stories until they started coming out about how blatant his sexual harassment and abuse is. It's just disgusting.
and very clearly using coercive control and using his spiritual religious power. I mean, in that first letter, how he was shaming the sisters into coming over to be fondled by saying, you're not with me, and you're not a good Christian unless you come over here and let me feel you up. I mean, it's the most sort of blatant and disgusting. I mean, to me, it's worse. I mean, the fact that he was sleeping with Madeleine Kerr, to me, is, well, that was probably a kind of a consensual relationship between consenting adults. You could credit him with that. But this wasn't. This was him just shaming people, using his religious authority to shame people to come over and to be just groped and felt up. And I mean, these are just two accounts. There's lots of other accounts of this happening, and even happening in meeting rooms. He would sit on the front row at the end of the meeting and call sisters to come down to the front row and sit on his knee, and he would feel their breasts and feel them up and down.
Like, we know that women have not had, like, they've been sitting in the backseat of this whole movement of the Plymouth Brethren, exclusive brethren, whatever you want to call it, at all their stages. But to me, JT Jr. was the one that made it okay. He was the one that set it in the minds of all of the men to come after him that this is okay. This is how we can treat women. And I'll end it there with letting you all come to your own conclusion. But to the women and to the children, to the teens inside the PBCC, you have a choice. I hope that you can stand up and find a way to battle the women's rights issues within there on all levels. Make sure you reach out to us if you're needing help. And I look forward to what this next year holds for us. We have a lot to come forward. If you thought the first year had a lot in it, just you wait. Our second year has, we're so busy. There's so much on the plates right now that we don't even have time to chew it all off. So we just have to be patient, and we'll get to it as it comes. So we just want to all say thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. Please, please, please make sure below you have subscribed to us. You have to hit subscribe to. You've got to make sure you subscribe. Like
and ding the bell so you get notifications when new episodes come out.
When we upload. And we also are on Anchor, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. There's a ton of other things that we're on. So find us, follow us, and let's continue this movement. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Lane.
Yeah.
And I look forward to what this next year brings us.
We've barely got started.
Yes, we have. Okay, much love to everyone. Take care.
If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.